Hey Pod Gang, how are you? Hope you're having a good week. Simon Gibson here, checking in. The podcast is Success Won't Come Calling, which is for people who want to be better tomorrow than they were today. I'm in the beautiful sunshine, walking to Liverpool Podcast Studios to meet with this week's guest, Jenny Radcliffe. Jenny is a social engineer and people penetration tester. Ooh. What that means is that she advises businesses and individuals on how they can avoid being robbed, burgled, or the subject of fraud or any sort of document theft through the manipulation of their staff or themselves. But Jenny doesn't do that by an audit or an investigation. She does it by burgling the premises herself. Now, this is really interesting. She's a global expert in this area. She's worked with corporate businesses, footballers, and every other type of business you can imagine who wants to protect their premises and protect their business. In addition to this, Jenny is an award-winning podcaster and she's an expert in negotiation, working all around the world. I can't wait to ask Jenny about all of these things, to ask what's happened when things go right when she's doing this job, what happens when things go wrong, and also how she did this in the first place. So it's going to be a cracker, guys. Sit back, stand up, do whatever you need to do, but enjoy this week's Success Won't Come Calling podcast with my guest, Jenny Radcliffe. We ready? Let's go.
Okay, Jenny Radcliffe, aka the People Hacker. Welcome. Thank you for doing this, Jenny.
Oh no, thanks for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's my pleasure. Now, we do guest rider on the podcast. We drink whatever the guest wants. What are we drinking, Jenny?
We are drinking a dark and stormy.
Dark and stormy. Now, this is a cocktail. What's in it?
So we've got rum. Not that I'm a pirate, but I'm a pirate. And there's always rum for pirates. So we get rum and we've got some ginger, gives a little kick, and some lime over ice.
Beautiful.
And it reminds me of celebration drinks when jobs are completed, because we always have a drink after we finish a job, of which more later, I'm sure.
I'm looking forward to it. But in the meantime, let me have a little go of it.
Very nice.
That is very, very tasty. That is very refreshing. Well, here's to you. Thank you very much for coming. Really great to see you. Thanks for being our guest.
It's lovely to be on a show based in Liverpool. So,
Indeed. But of course,
my pleasure.
whilst you were born and bred in Liverpool, you've worked all over the world, and you are a social engineer.
I am.
And I think it's fair to say that not everyone watching and listening will necessarily know what a social engineer is. So I've seen you online referred to as a burglar for hire, as a professional con artist.
Yeah.
So I'm intrigued. Talk me through what you do, Jenny.
So I'm a hacker. So most people's image of hackers from the media or from films is usually a single male in a basement wearing a black hoodie, not many mates, but using tech to hack people. So I'm not really a technical hacker at all. So I don't really use technology. What I use is the computer between your ears. So I hack people's brains, not in a horrible way, because I'm an ethical hacker. So I'm asked to do this to show what the bad guys could do. So I use manipulation techniques, psychology, to get people to tell me things that may not be in their interests to tell someone. But I'm also a specialist in physical infiltration, which the shorthand for is a burglar. or back in the day in Liverpool, breaking and entering. So I'm a specialist for that, and I'm hired to do that by clients because if I can do it, so can a criminal.
Well, I mean, I can really see how that would work. So effectively, if a business wants to make sure they're properly protected against risk of fraud, theft, you would advise them on what they need to do to keep the bad guys out.
Exactly. So we infiltrate, we break their security, film it. If I'm breaking in, I'll film it, and then we'll present that back and let them harden their security. So if you'd have done this, we couldn't have got in. And a lot of it's an education piece with the people. Yeah.
I can see how that would work. And presumably then the client has got the decision to take on whether they refine or increase their investment in security or they take the risk.
Yeah. I mean, once I'm in, they tend to invest. But yeah, it's up to the client then what they need to do. So
fascinating. And I'm showing my age here, but I'm thinking back to those careers evenings at school where they used to have the tables round. You'd have the army over there. You'd perhaps have the local newspaper over there. I don't remember a social engineering table.
No. And do you know what? I never even called myself a social engineer for years. For years and years, for a couple of reasons, really. One was I didn't want to kind of propagate any myths about Scousers and Liverpool. And so if you say you're a burglar from Liverpool, now I kind of roll with it. But I'm very careful about that because, we have to be careful not to kind of reinforce negative stereotypes. But also because we never labelled it as that.
No.
And it wasn't considered a legit career until I was a bit older. I'm old as well. So no, there was nothing like that. In fact, they told me I could be a teacher. And I am an educator in some ways, so I guess so. But no one said I could be a burglar for a living, not legitimately anyway.
So on that basis then, how did you first begin to develop an interest in this issue of security?
So, in security, I suppose I had a skill set that fit security. That was the thing. And we'll talk about sort of origins and everything, I'm sure. But in terms of when did I know that this was the industry that my skills fit? I'd been working and doing it on the side. It was like a side hustle, really, because I didn't think you could have a legitimate career. So I had a legitimate career, all kinds of degrees and qualifications and other things. And I was on the speaking circuit talking about negotiation because I'd done crisis and communication negotiations and stuff like that. I'm very busy at the moment with ransomware and everything. But there was a conference in London and they said, can you get up and just talk about social engineering? That's what it's called, isn't it? And I was like, I suppose so. And it was the cybersecurity industry. And I got there and the guy who was on stage before me overran by about 15 minutes, right? And if you're a speaker, it's a cardinal sin, right? So I'm like, this fella's overrun. And I thought, these are loads of techies. They're not going to care about psychological security. They're not going to care about me using persuasion or influence. I was getting more and more annoyed. And then they said, look, can you go really quickly? And they knocked 10 minutes off me talk. So I just went, right, fine. And I was in a bad mood anyway. I'm good when I'm in a bad mood. And I stood on the stage and I said it in a poem. Right, I don't know why. And I'm dead embarrassed about it now, but I've got mates in the industry who were there that day. And I get very scouse when I do a poem. So don't talk to me about security. Like, I'm inside your head. I'm everything you wish I wasn't. I'm the red underneath your bed. Right. And all these security officers and CISO, Chief Information Security, all just sort of sat up like that. And I went, what are you putting in place? I said, it doesn't matter because I'm going to get past your receptionist, I'm going to get past your PA, I'm going to get past your security guards, I don't care. And that was really what got me into the industry because that just made this massive splash in the cybersecurity industry because everyone just sat up and went, oh my God, she's right. The humans are going to let her pass.
Well, that was when I was doing my homework, that really resonated with me because... I remember last week I was walking into an office building and there was a great sort of key card entry system and there were people walking around with those things around their necks where they were showing them. I walked in, I was lost. And inevitably I was looking around and a guy walked up behind me and said, I'm coming in here, mate. I'll let you in if you want. And I just thought to myself when I was doing my homework, he probably shouldn't have done that.
No, shouldn't have done that.
I wasn't up to anything untoward, I hasten to add. But if I was, That would have been a pretty effective and seamless way of getting entry to the building.
And it's exploiting people's natural characteristics. So people are very helpful. Scousers are helpful. People in Ireland are helpful. You know, do a lot of work in Northern Ireland. Like, and the Irish are like Scousers. They just embrace Scousers. So if I start speaking all the time, I go out in Ireland and they go, "Oh, come in." If I'm carrying a box, people's natural inclination is to help other people. But unfortunately, from a security perspective, that makes you very vulnerable.
It does. So what was the first time you were ever paid to do this in terms of a project or an assignment?
So we had, so I used to, the first time I got paid was working with my cousins. So I had some cousins who were, you know, half my family are very senior police and army, right, and military. And the other half weren't. It was the other half I hung around with. and basically, they used to do this. So I used to pull cons all over this city, honest to God. We did pull these little cons. But I looked innocent, and I also was quite good at writing up reports. So my cousins had been working the doors all over Liverpool. And the only people with money were the football players when I was growing up. And they had these big houses in places like Formby.
Yeah.
And so they'd say, "Can you come and see if you can break into the house?" Because they were getting broken into, right? So we went and did all these security assessments, what we'd now call penetration tests, right? Don't even go there, penetration test. And I'd go and see if I could break in. And so I got like a share of the money for that. And then they had businesses as well in like Exchange Flags and places like that. I'm saying this because I'm in Liverpool. You see, this reference is lost on anyone else, but some of the big office parts of Liverpool. And so they had offices as well. So it went from their houses to offices. And sort of, I was always like part of the crew for that. But then I got a call from a guy who asked me to do a job in the city. And I remember saying to him, you know, "Yeah, I'll just have to ask the boys if they're free." And he went, "Do you need the boys anymore?" And I thought, actually, do you know what? I probably don't for this. It was just a little job. So I did mention it to the cousins. They were like, "Oh yeah, whatever. How are you getting paid?" And the thing is, what you have to understand is I had waitressing jobs at the time and bar work. That, like, I remember I had a waitressing job, and this really does age me. But like I was pulling in like 11 quid for a Saturday job when I was a kid. But like those jobs would be paying me 300, 400, 500 quid.
And how old were you then?
So I started out, I mean, I would say that I started out doing it as a kid and doing urban exploration. I started out when I was really little. I was about 7 or 8, to be honest. I was getting dragged along with the crew. And then I started going out drinking. This is terrible. I don't want my family to listen to this. But I was drinking in the city at like 14. And I'm pulling those cons at sort of 15. And the first time I did that job entirely on my own, I just started uni. So I would have been about 18, yeah. And now, like, you know, I'm honorary lecturer at University of Liverpool now.
I saw that. Did they know that you were out drinking at 14 and 15?
They do now.
So that's really interesting, because I can see how getting that sort of job with the footballers would have been a lot more lucrative than doing restaurant and bar work.
Yeah.
What about then? What was the sort of the next stage of the sort of the project?
What, with the football players?
No, I just mean in terms of the business. How did it sort of develop from there?
Oh, so I mean, for me, it was just like something on the side, right? It was just like, that was how, you know, because it was like, I never thought it was remotely legitimate. And so like, it was just like, oh yeah, you know, it's just like, oh, Jenny can do that for you. You know, if you want Jen to, you know, get into your bill and just show the receptionist that like she shouldn't have let it in, Jenny will do that. Or like, we were going in a lot of the businesses in and around Liverpool, and they'd just say, try and sneak into the office. So we get into the office in various shops and bars and things. And I just go in the office and I sometimes pour a drink and everything and just drink a drink. Oh, like terrible. But then my cousins actually sold them alarms. Isn't this terrible? They sold them burglar alarm there and said, you know, right. So that was how it kind of grew. And then they kind of went the wrong way, to be honest with you. And we grew further apart, and I was studying. So what happened all through uni, and off and on through my first kind of jobs and things, I just get asked to do work. So it'd be like, you know, if you're in London, I'm in London. Well, can you do this? Can you do an assessment? Or, you know, I've got a friend who wants his business assessed. And I just say yes. So it was always like cash in hand, obviously declared it. Cash in hand and everything. And it was just a supplementary income, you see. But it wasn't a legitimate thing. You would never have said, oh, I do breaking and entering for a living. It's a security assessment. It was just something that occasionally people wanted. And sometimes the people who asked me to do it seemed dodgy-ish, but nothing that it would have frightened me away. And it just kind of went from there. But I never thought that it would be a proper job, really. So I was studying and doing other things. And I got, like I say, got a degree in things, and I was quite good in the job I did. So I ended up as a negotiator, mostly in Asia, for big American, like Fortune 500 firms, because I was good with people. And for my job, you have to be able to read people profile, you know, the way people are thinking, what they might do next. I need to be able to pick out like where the source of power is in a group. So the alpha male or female within a group, and then know how to separate them off. And so all that stuff's really good in business, particularly in negotiation, and particularly negotiating in Asia, because there's a big cultural divide between the way the West would negotiate. So these were American firms. So the Americans would go in, get straight down to business, great in its way, but like people I work for, or we were negotiating with in China and Taiwan and Thailand and, you know, Japan, there's more preamble, and it's more complex. But I'd studied all of that. So I was very disposable in terms of the business I work for, because I was still very young and whatever. But I was good, and I knew that, you know, we had to build up something called guanxi, which means relationships. So we had to build up the guanxi in Asia. I could sort of talk to the kids and the wives and everything. And I was getting really good results as a legitimate procurement officer, essentially a buyer. But while I was there, I used to get these calls. Kind of, you know, even if I was going through America, or I was in, you know, I did jobs in America and all over Europe. Are you in, you know, I remember getting one like, you know, are you in Stockholm? So I'm in Stockholm on Thursday. You do as a job, you go and have a look around this building, see if you can get in. Or loads in Germany and Belgium.
And was that a business who would contact you and say?
Individuals, yeah. So they sometimes it'd be just legit, you know, security contractors. Sometimes it'd be individuals, high net worth individuals, so billionaires and millionaires sometimes want the security looked at. And I still have clients in that particular sector today. And it'd be, can you get into the office? Can you look around? Can you do those things?
And that's because they were wanting to make sure that their defences and their risk procedures were where they needed to be.
Yeah, so people operations technology. So we say, are the people following the rules? Are the people, and you know, and I'd analyse whether they had insider threats. Was the people within the company working to, you know, disrupt the company or steal from the company? So there's a lot of industrial espionage there. So there was that, whether their technology could be bypassed. So I mean, I remember one place, and I think it was Belgium, it probably was Belgium, it usually was, where they had this door with all these mad like combination locks and cards and everything, which is a big security measure. So something you remember, the combination, something you carry the card. But they said, so, you know, Jen, you wouldn't get over that. And I just went, oh, it's a dropped ceiling. It's a dropped ceiling, which means that the door, all those measures go up to the door, but then above it, I can just push the tiles up on the ceiling, just climb over. So all we needed to do was get in with a ladder. And there's ladders everywhere in businesses, you wouldn't believe. Like how many ladders most people have in the company. Everyone listening to this, if you're in an office now, you'll have a caretaker or a maintenance cupboard, and in that cupboard there'll be a ladder big enough for me to climb. So all we had to do was get in, hide, wait until they shut the building down, grab the ladder, and then just put the ladder against the wall, push the ceiling tiles, just polystyrene,
and climb over.
Just climb over and drop down.
Because you know the other thing, I get
and
you
they'd
say
spent about 40 grand on those
on the system. But you know as well, because I do think you're right about these ladders knocking around. But also in one of our offices, even during the day when we were there, if I saw someone putting a ladder up and removing ceiling panels, I wouldn't think, oh my God, there's something untoward. I'd think, oh, there must be you as a contractor to do some sort of work.
All I'd do is put a high-vis vest on, and everyone would go, all right. And I go, all right, cheers.
It's unbelievable, isn't it? I'm starting to get worried. I might drive around all of our businesses this afternoon and just make sure there's no ladders anywhere. You know, just you mentioned obviously the footballers, that would be more of a domestic type security situation.
Yeah.
Do you have any examples of where in your business you've been able to bypass and get around security in sort of corporate environments?
Yeah, I know what one you've always said. So I was on there was an example that's very good. I was in Europe, and like my job, so I do a lot of public speaking, so a lot of keynotes, and I was doing keynote speaking about persuasion influence methods for Somalian pirates. This was in a conference in Germany. It was brilliant. There was drunk people up against the window of this big posh hotel and like flashing people and everything on stage. But it was a very serious topic. So afterwards, everyone goes out and unwinds. And I was going back to my hotel, and as I got to the door of the hotel, I had someone go, Jenny Radcliffe. And I looked, and this isn't actually that unusual. Things like this happen to me all the time. But the guy said, it was this guy, and he said, we need your help to break into a bank, right? Which isn't like that big a deal. And so I was like, okay, I don't know you. You could be a terrorist. You could be a criminal. No. And he said, no, we're legit. And he gave me this card, and he said, we're a legitimate security company. I've had someone bail, and we need a social engineer because all of them look like him. And he was like 6'7", huge, big, former military. And one of the things that it is with me is that I'm none of those things, right? So I look innocent, I look normal at least, and I don't really stand out. So the ability, people often ask me about disguise, but disguise is, it's more the ability to blend. It's not, if you put a big red wig on or something, someone is going to notice that. So anyway, I sort of made a few calls and I checked them out, and then they were offering me a stupid amount of money to do it. And they said, all we need you to do, stay on an extra day, Friday morning. You've got to get past the security guards in this bank and get to the top corridor. And we want you to just do a few things with the computers in the corridor. So,
and this is in Germany, is it?
This is in Hamburg. Yeah. It was in Hamburg. I've said that before, so I might as well say it was in Hamburg. And it was like I looked at it and I thought, this is just not that difficult. They had the layout, so I had the plans. They told me the security system that was in use, and it was a biotech lock, so it was a fingerprint lock. And also the security shifts and everything else, and they had surveillance photographs and stuff for me. So they'd done all the pre-work, which is like 80% of the job is the surveillance and the prep. So all I really had to do was get past the guy. Now, if it's me up against a security guard, I back me most times, right? Because, they have a way that they have to think, but I didn't speak German. So I'm thinking, okay, what can I do that's sort of universal? I know. So I didn't have time or a lot of resources with me. So I went to a chemist and I bought a bandage, and I bandaged up my right hand. And then I got to the bank, walked straight up to the lock, which is like, when I say a bank, it's not like a bank that a normal person would go into. It's a financial institution. There's beautiful like oak panels. One of these oak panels is a door with a bio lock there. And I get up to it, and I've got my right hand bandaged, and I'm sort of carrying a bag and things in the right hand. And I've got folders in my left hand. And I put my finger up on the bio lock, which of course doesn't know me because I don't work there. So it says no, right? Computer says no. So I swore really loudly, right? Now, if you can imagine how posh this place is, everybody looks around. The guard kind of goes, hey. And I was like, did it again, beep, beep, beep. And I went, this isn't working. So anger and confrontation. People don't want that, particularly if there's lots of posh customers
That's
around,
a good point.
right? So you use them, you're working within the culture. And I went, it doesn't work. It didn't work yesterday. Hello, I need to get in, like really snotty. And the guy went, well, just give me your hand and let's try. So he grabbed my hand and sort of pushed it down. And I was, ow, ow, because you've wrapped, it's clearly injured. I went, it's injured, isn't it? Ow, that's probably why it doesn't work. He says, try your other one. I went, well, they didn't test the other one, but okay. Went like that and then just dropped all these magazine files, all this paper everywhere. I was like, oh, you've done, oh, for fuck's sake. And you could see he was mortified. Everyone's looking over. And he went, oh, for God's sake, just go in.
But that, do you know what
Just
it's interesting?
go in.
Because
And
I think that's what I'd do.
Yeah.
You had to give her the key first.
I know, exactly.
So I just went, okay, like that. I went, I'm probably said something like absolutely, or it's about time or something. As if I had the right to be angry with the poor fella. Went in, and of course, as soon as I was through, dumped the files, and it just led me through to a top corridor, and I had to do a couple of things. So I had to download a file off the finance director's computer to take a few photographs, and I had to plant a few things within their site. So some Wi-Fi technology that just basically records everything that they do. Now, don't forget, this is legit. The bank have asked this to happen to show their senior team, their C-suite, that it's infiltratable. So did all that, found a fire escape, left. They picked me up in the car. I just remember coming out and there was cameras in the car park. I'm like pulling the bandage off with my teeth and just go, ha, 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 ha. And then making this massive bank. I mean, serious cash. But at that point, I realised that my reputation for being able to do this had kind of sort of gone across borders and transcended borders, and that, there was this reputation for being able to do it.
Oh my God, was that? You know what? I was trying to think at the start if you were like a female James Bond or a baddie off James Bond, and you're definitely the latter.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, do you know what? People say that all the time, and I see, like, a lot of people do the job and they say they don't rely on the physical side so much. And it's because, obviously, if you're a technical hacker, you can rely on the tech. So I do know tech tricks, but hardly use any of them because, like, there's much better people at it. But I don't think it's that James Bond. I mean, I don't. To me, it's just, I didn't even think half of the stuff I did was remarkable until people like yourselves went, you know what, that's a good story. Would you come and tell it on the show? I did see it, but I didn't see it that much. I mean, there's one, right? I only told this on an American show earlier this week, but you probably haven't heard it. But there was this time when you asked about corporate. There was this place, and they asked us to get in, and he said, "Look, you won't get in, right?" He goes, "Because we've spent $2 million on the perimeter fence. You'll never get through." He says, "And the security guards are really on it. So, he said, but if you can get through, Jem, we'll double your fee, right?" So I went, "I'll get through. I'll find a way. Nature finds a way." And so what we did in the research, we found out that the company, they did things like MOTs and that on site in the car park. So, like, if anything happened to your car, they'd call out, they had like an arrangement, like a contract, it was part of the perks. And so we saw this car and we shot it out with a pellet gun. So we smashed the windscreen with the pellet gun and then turned up in a van. I love vans. I haven't got a van. I've hired them, but I always want a van. Turned up in a van with a, like Jen's repair shop, auto repair shop on the side. Like, it's like 50 quid to get a magnetic van thing. And turns up and just went to security, go, "Yeah, you got a registration in there? Yeah, the register would just come to check it out, probably can't fix it today," like that. And the guy went, "Yeah, go through." And we went through, and my two accomplices, they're like messing around, pretending to look at this smash windscreen, which, don't forget, they will replace. It's all legit. And I went and hid behind the bins, which is where you'd always end up hiding. And they left, and I was still there. And what I'd done in my research is I'd worked out that this was a very rule-driven company. They were very old-fashioned, very hierarchical. So we printed out with the logo of the company in the top right, "Please do not shut this door!" ! And just put a vague signature at the bottom and wrote HR underneath it. And then we slammed that on the door, right? Stuck it on the outside of this fire door. And I'm waiting. This fella comes out and goes, must have been going for a smoke or something. Comes out and goes, "Oh," wedges the door open. And then everybody was coming out and everyone was going to close it. And they went, "Oh no, you're not supposed to close it." HR said, "Don't close it." Just waited for the shift to finish. And I went in and rinsed them 40 minutes. And the thing is, and I was like that, twice the fee. And it cost them, like, they had to, fix the poor fella's windscreen as well. But, like, they had the contract for that. But that's about knowing what will work in a given situation.
Well, I could see that because, again, every one of these examples, I'm trying to think, I could see how people would do that. I can't believe we're at the end of part one already, guys, but it's been amazing. If you think this has been good, guys, stick with us. We've got a halftime recommendation, but then we're back with Jenny Radcliffe, the people hacker. I'm going to ask Jenny next, has this ever gone wrong? So stick with me for that. And I want to ask Jenny lots of questions about being a fantastic entrepreneur and a podcaster and a host of a great TV channel, and also what her future plans are. So don't go anywhere. See you the other side of halftime.
It's halftime, friends. My recommendation this week goes to everyone who's been asking me where we record the podcast. It looks amazing, doesn't it? We record at Liverpool Podcast Studios, which is on Jordan Street, near to Liverpool's Baltic Market. It's really good and great value for money. They also deal with production of each episode and all editing. You can find them on Instagram, and also they have a website which you will be able to contact them through. So we record the podcast at Liverpool Podcast Studios. It's great. If you're thinking of starting a podcast, check them out and give them a call. And now it's back to the podcast with Jenny Radcliffe, aka the People Hacker. You ain't seen nothing yet.
Hello guys, we're back with Jenny Radcliffe, aka the People Hacker. Thanks for doing this again, Jenny.
No, it's my pleasure, honestly.
My pleasure. Now, you mentioned earlier that when you went into this business, this fantastic business that you've got, that it was consistent with your skill base. But let's wind back a bit. How did you get those skills in the first place?
So, grew up in Liverpool, and it was, as you probably know, like, you know, there was a lot of sort of crime and it was a bit rough at the time. And I had a few sort of misadventures when I was younger. So there was an incident with a neighbour, and then I got like almost beaten up in an alleyway, and I had to fight my way out, right? So I got it. There was a gang of lads. Basically, it was a gang of lads. I don't know exactly what they were going to do, but the only thing I had on me was a can of Tango. So I shook up the can and I exploded it in the kid's face. This is the biggest kid. And then I folded it in half and I banged him on the head and cut until his head was split open, right? And after that, my mum kind of went, you know what, I think she needs to just have someone with her when she's out. And very misguidedly gave me to my two cousins as like their little protege to like hang out with them, teach me to be a bit more streetwise, which they really did. So they were into urban exploration, which is, I mean, it still exists now. It's basically getting in and having a look around abandoned buildings, right? So don't take anything, don't break anything, which they mostly stuck to, but go and have a look. So they would drag me into all this. So basically in Liverpool at the time, lots of abandoned buildings. I mean, even driving here today, I was looking at warehouses and things on the Dock Road. I've been in all of them. When I was this high, I used to get in, just look around and get legs off the, get chased by security guards. And what that did was that taught me lots of things. So it taught me, a little bit about routines and like the way a building breathes. A bit about what security guards see and what they don't see. So all of that was going on. And we were in and out of all these buildings. And then it got to be, can we get into buildings that weren't empty? Right. Because like that was fun as well. So like, and as I got older, I learned things like trespass law and how to run quickly. But generally it was that. And so I started to put this skill set together. And early doors, I said to them, can I pick the next place we go and see? And I had this like minor obsession with lions. So I picked a zoo, which has since been closed. I asked the lads if you could go and they said, well, why not? So they basically yeeted me over the fence.
So I was going to say, you're going to tell me you broke into a zoo now.
We got into the zoo. I didn't just say when we got into that, we weren't the only people who'd broken in that night. Like, it was full of kids. But we got in and they just left me. So I would have been 7 or 8. They just left me and went off. And I could hear them laughing off in the distance. I could hear like the fair was in the back of Southport Zoo, just to say it's closed now. You could hear the fair and people laughing and everything. You smell fish and chips on the air. But I was only interested in one thing, going to see the lion. And I had like a little rucksack with a little Sesame Street torch in and a little cup drink. Them terrible cup drinks with no fruit in them. There's just chemicals.
Yes.
And I went to the thing and there was nothing there, right? So I looked and you could see this big empty cage. I knew it was there because I'd been with my mum and dad in the day, plenty of times. And it was just like this log. And so I looked away and when I looked back, it was right there, this lion, but it was only like chicken wire between me and it.
And that was an actual lion?
It was a full-grown male lion, which in my head was called Caesar, but I think it wasn't called Caesar. And I just went, like that. And I had the Sesame Street torch shining at it, which cast no light anyway, did it? Threw the torch up, it shattered. I start screaming and running. My cousins come. But the lion sounds like that slamming itself against the wire. So it's like, it just went completely crackers. We all started running for the fence. But my cousins are laughing. I start laughing. They pushed me back over. We ran down to the beach. We just lay on the beach. We could hear it roaring all over Southport that night. The thing went mental. Not long after that, they closed the zoo, but not because of me, I have to say. So, like, you should be put off by things like that, but it didn't put me off at all. It was great, like.
Would you just for our younger viewers and listeners, Sesame Street was a puppet show in the US.
Still going. They've got COVID.
Really?
Sesame Street advice.
Have they? Yeah. But I mean, it was very much a kid's staple in the 80s. I mean, I wouldn't fancy facing a lion, full stop. But if I did, I wouldn't want my only weapon to be a Sesame Street torch. I just can't think of anything worse.
Sesame Street torch and some cheek. Doesn't work with lions.
Not really.
So yeah, so we'd done that, and then the night we decided we wanted to go and see a body. Right, this is terrible. It was like Stand By Me. So when you're a kid, this one was a bit older. When you're a kid, you think, I really want to see a dead body. Well, you do until you do, right? I can promise you. So there was this funeral parlour near where I lived in Bootle, still there. And I said to all my mates, look, we go in, just get locked in, it'll be a laugh. You think it is, it's not. So we go in, got through the shutters with the vans, and they did close the doors, right? So we start looking around, and none of it was locked on the inside, right? So you could go into the reception area and everything. And quite quickly, I was like, this is very disrespectful. We shouldn't have done this, right? This is bad. Let's just go. But the cousins went, no, this is your job. We're your crew. We're not going to go without seeing it. So we went to, it was obvious where it was as well. Because, there's, this reception area, and there's, the chapel of rest, and then there's a corridor. So we walked down the corridor, and there's this big door that says, staff only. And I was thinking, please be locked, please be locked, please be locked. It wasn't locked. And we went in, and we brought this absolute muppet of a kid with us that I just hung around with. And there was a table in the middle of, this sort of floor. And literally there's a dead body on the table covered by a canvas, right? And he goes, yeah, it's not meant to be like that. They're meant to be in fridges. I've seen it on the telly. Right? And we went, well, we're here now. Someone's got to go and pull, because you could tell it was a dead body, eh? Someone's got to go and pull the canvas off, right? Because, why wouldn't you at this point? So we're all stood there. And I went, well, tell you what, someone do it. I said, but just let's have the door open. We'll just pull it off and then we'll run. Right? Got to the door and the door was locked. So it did lock from the inside, but not the outside.
So what happened?
So then, more or less simultaneously, I'm going, oh my God, we're locked in. My cousin goes like that, and there's this naked dead fella on the table. And everyone went, couldn't get out. We're all locked in there. We locked in there for ages, honest to God. And then they came back. And whoever it was who was in charge of it came back. We heard the van pull in. The shutter doors open. We heard the van pull in. And oh my God. And I nearly says his name then. So my oldest cousin went, right, everybody line up. And the minute that door opens, just make a load of noise and run past them because the noise will disorientate them. So there's still this dead body there and everything. So we go, and ran out when he opens it and ran out into the night, ran out through the bridge. And this kid that we brought with us was going, it's not meant to be, it's meant to be in a fridge, it's meant to be in a fridge. And we were like, mate, shut the as if that's the point at this point, do you know what I mean?
Well, if you break into a funeral parlour like that, I think the fact that the bodies aren't refrigerated isn't the biggest issue you're potentially facing.
But for him it was. And he probably went on, and he's probably a police officer or an accountant or something very serious now, But we were all like, oh, shut up now. I remember my cousin going, oh, God, don't bring him again, But, and and there was loads of instances like that. And I mean, as I said, there's a book coming and, they've asked me to write about them all. And as I was writing it, I was remembering just dozens and dozens of times when we did something like that. But over the course of it, it was just massive amount of experience. And then when I did start doing it for a living and got paid to do it, made a million mistakes, but did so many of them. And at this point, I kind of did a quick kind of recce in my head. And it's probably about 600 premises as a burglar I've got into.
And I want to move on to the fact that you've made a living out of this.
Yeah.
And that you not only have done that, but you are literally a global renowned expert in this issue.
It's a brand, really, now.
Well, that's even mine, because you've got.
Which makes me really feel weird saying that, but I think it is,
Because you started Human Security.
Yeah, Human Factor Security.
Human Factor Security. That was about 9 or 10 years ago, wasn't it? Obviously, since then, you've developed your podcast, which has got the same name. You've got Test Talk, which is your panel show where you're talking to security experts from all over the world. You've written, you've spoken, you've presented. You really have developed this brand and this it's a true expertise that you've got. Let me just ask you, what over your years in business and in terms of developing this expertise, have there ever been points where you felt frustrated in terms of the way the business was going, or had any doubts?
Oh my God, it's so hard sometimes because it's really difficult. Like, I mean, a lot of the crews that I worked with in the early days went and did different things. Disappear for 3 to 5 years, that type of thing. And so like it was quite difficult to keep consistency and the quality of the thing together, as well as like teach people, so I've got to be careful who I teach this stuff to. And so like this, I mean, to sustain something and to keep a business current, and to not sort of stray over to the dark side and kind of give in and just go, yeah, come on, just pay me loads of money and I'll teach like some random criminal or terrorist how to do something. That's difficult and it's tempting. And there's been many a time when we've been, so short of cash and everything else. So I really had to learn everything as I went. And I mean, there was even one point, I'm laughing when I say, there's one point I thought, sod this, I'm just not going to do it anymore. So I've had a shop as well. I took a year off after a particularly difficult job, which I'm sure you're going to ask me about. But I took a year off and I opened a little shop. I had a beauty salon. Just because I'd made some money I wanted to throw away, apparently, but I wanted to hide from security. But then there was even a time when I just thought, I'm not doing this again. And I actually applied to be an in-house trainer because I teach. I've set the exams for like lots of MBAs. I teach MBAs at about, multiple universities. And I applied to be an in-house trainer for a sofa company because I just thought this is just, there's times when if you're an entrepreneur and if you run your own business, you just want that regular wage sometimes. It's just the ups and downs of it can be very disorientating. And what I'd say to people is like, you just have to keep going and keep, if you've got that expertise, then that'll get you through. But the biggest thing and the thing I see people fall down on all the time, and it fits with the podcast Success Won't Come Calling, is its work ethic. Talent is one thing, and the ability and charisma and talent and all those things that make you a good public speaker or get you to, make your podcast good. All of that's great, but anyone can outwork you. So if you're prepared to outwork someone, that's what really gives you success. It's that work ethic. And I see it in people within the first, usually day or two of working with them. And certainly I kind of have an opinion on it after speaking to someone for not too long. It's the idea that you're going to get up at 5 o'clock if you need to get up for 5 o'clock. You're not going to have the drink at night because you've got to be up early. You're going to write the report. You're going to not do those things. It's work ethic that matters. Discipline and work ethic. If I didn't have those two things, I wouldn't have what I have now.
Well, there's such a lot of interesting stuff there. Let's just unpack that. I do want to move on to that story that you've mentioned, but I mean, I could not agree with you more in terms of what you've just said. The 2 points I take from what you just said is, first of all, this issue of being focused upon developing your expertise, having a clear vision for where you want your career or your life to go. I couldn't agree with that more. But hard work, I can't think of many people, if any, truly successful people, i.e. those who've combined good relationships, good family, good health with successful business, with earning a good living, who don't work very hard and also very smart. So I would absolutely echo that, Jenny. And if anyone is listening and they have a crossroads, they're frustrated, then it is about you both being clear on where you want to get to and then working very hard to get there. So I couldn't agree with you more. But obviously, no matter how hard we work, sometimes things do go wrong.
They do.
They don't go to plan. You know what story that I'm driving at when it didn't go so well. So over to you. So
of the 600 buildings that I've got into, most of it goes very normally right, and especially after all this time, I have sets of rules that I follow. I have protocols. A lot of people in my business are very superstitious, right? Con artists are superstitious, right? So we have ways that we prepare a mark and ways that we prepare for a job. But there's times when you just don't do it. And I always say now, like I broke all my rules in this job, but basically I was working as a negotiator in the Far East and we were coming home through Hong Kong and it was me and a mate of mine, Ginger Dave. And we were, so everyone in the engineering departments of the company I worked for was called Dave, apart from one guy called Carl. So we called him Dave just for ease. But I was in Asia, with Ginger Dave. So there was like tall Dave, fat Dave, Ginger Dave. And I was in Asia with Ginger Dave.
I would be prepared to call tall Dave.
And,
I like that.
And we were supposed to be heading home, right? And so you're in Hong Kong, ready to go home from Honkers. And and I get this call and it was a customer of mine who calls me sort of on the regular. I do about 3 or 4 jobs for him a year back then, probably 2 now. And he said, you know, he says, no, you're in Hong Kong. You always knew where I was. And he said, are you flying back business or? I went, no. I said, they're sly, tight so-and-sos have put me in. Coach, he went, you want to fly back business? I went, yeah. And he went, do you want to make some money and do a bit of spending? I suggested. He said, well, I'm going to send you to another Asian city, which I won't mention. It's just a little job I need you to do. And he gave me some of the address. Anyway, I went to the city, checked into the hotel, got the deets to this job. And basically what he wanted me to do was I had to get into this big house. I had to get into the study, which was in this house, whoever owned the house's study. And I had to look for this address, a name and address inside like a file or fax thing in the guy's desk. And if I found it, I had to leave a note, right? And if it wasn't there, I didn't leave anything. I just had to get out. So fair enough, that's the job. So I decided to do a recce. And I went and I looked at this big house where this was going to happen. And it was in this street where massive big houses, but not a soul and not a sound in the street. It was almost like a movie set. It was completely abandoned. And I went and looked at the house and I could see how I was going to get in. I thought, fine, do you know what? This is easy. So I just went like, okay, all set for tomorrow night, the Saturday. Tonight, I'm just going to go and have something to eat, get a good night's sleep. I'm ready to go. And I got back and just ran a bath. I actually got undressed, was going to get in the bath. And I thought, you know what? I'll do it now. Now, you never do that, right? Because my contact knows when I'm going. I've got, you know, at that point, people know where I am and know what I'm doing. You don't spontaneously decide to do a breaking and entering job, a physical infiltration. But I was just impatient. There was nothing else going on. So I went down into the hotel lobby and I just picked up a torch and I looked through the minibar in my room and there was a bottle opener. And I just thought, right, okay, so, you know, I'll use this for the door. And, you know, you don't need to know how I know that that's how you break into things, but it was. And I was like, that's all I'll need to get in. And I knew, and I went. And by then, darkness was kind of falling. And I got in through. So basically, and this is the word to the wise, if you have French doors, they are completely easy for anyone to break into, right? French doors of any kind, I can just get through. I can get through with nothing. I don't need anything to get through them. If you do have them, you need lots of locks, alarms, and fit them properly. Anyway, French doors on this place, all completely quiet. And I just got in through these doors and sort of wandered around. This great big, it was a mansion, right? But it wasn't really lived in. Like, there was evidence of human occupation, but it wasn't really lived in. And it was all a bit easy. And I started thinking to myself, what kind of person doesn't bother locking the doors? Someone who's not frightened of burglars, probably. Oh, that's probably a clue. And so I sort of wandered around, found the office exactly where I was told, found the number where I was told. And I was sort of sitting spinning on the, like, office chair. It was in this gorgeous office with the fish tank and everything. And I saw car lights pull up outside. It's like, oh my God. And it was private security come to see who broke into the house. It's like, oh my God. So I had Connie's on, little Converse. And I remember hearing the sound of the Converse up the marble stairs. I dived upstairs. Dived to the way I got in was through like a French window on an upper floor. Dived out the window. Went down the stairs and there was these 2 4x4s just blocking the entrance to the house. So sugar. So I ran over to the wall that like circled the garden and pressed myself up against the wall and just thought, if I press myself flat against this, it's quite dark, you know, they won't really see, sort of dusk, they won't really see. Best chance I've got. But I'd also dropped the torch, which I bought from the hotel little gift shop with the name of the frigging hotel on it. And I didn't need the bottle opener, so I just put them at the bottom of the stairs, just left them. And I didn't even think about it. Anyway, so I'm flat against there. And I could see the people that had got out these cars, and they were the most serious looking security staff you've ever seen in your life. Massive, heavy, security guards. One of them had gone in and was looking all around the house, and they're speaking in like rapid, I'd say Chinese, just let's say Chinese for argument's sake, for shorthand, rapid Chinese into the radios. And I could hear guns being cocked. And I know what that sounds like. And I just was lying there, and I suddenly felt like I was going to burst out laughing, which would be the worst thing. But it's nerves, because I was like, oh my God. And I remember thinking, this will be it. Like if this happens, I've used up my 9 lives, and all that'll be in the papers, if there was anything, would be businesswoman goes missing in Asia. There'll be nothing else. So I went, what I'll need to just try and crawl out. If the other one follows him into the house, I'm going to make a run for it. I went like that to move, and my hair wouldn't move. And at the time, I had this really long ponytail, and I've always thought that it was somehow under the wheel of the car, or at least caught in a bush or something. But I couldn't move at all, which was probably a good thing, because running for it would have been a bad idea. And I'm just lying there, and there was like, honest to God, I was like pressing on. I was sort of sinking into the soil, and there was insects and stuff. And I was just like, oh my God, what are you doing? And the reason that this is so bad is because I didn't have backup. I wasn't legit. I realised
the client didn't know you were there?
Client didn't know I was there that night. And I remember thinking, this is way off. This is not right. Because like when we do it for real, now for real, there's contracts and we have all sorts of things. But there was nothing there that night. And it was all a bit immediate. And then the next thing, they just got in, put the guns away, got in, and just roared off into the night. And I stood up. And my hair was free, which is why I think it was probably under the wheel. But I can't imagine how that happened, but I think it was. I don't know, I was looking at the wall. Stood up and I was a bit wobbly. And I got out and I kind of walked really quickly away. Got a cab back to the hotel. And I walked into the hotel. And it's a very posh hotel. And the type of hotel where there's the hole behind the bar is mirrors.
Yeah.
And I looked, and I was my top was ripped. I had muck and blood on me, so cuts all over me. My hair was just like this, cuts all over me, muck all over me, and it's like 3:45 in the morning or something. And I walked to the barman, and I went, "Make me something very alcoholic that a kid could drink." And because it's a very posh hotel, coming right up, madam, right? And so I sat down, and I had that picking bits of grass out my hair, just like that. And at that point, I thought, I'm going to sell T-shirts or something for the rest of my life, right? I'm not going to do this. So I went like this, got me drink and put it down. And he went, "Do you want a beer chaser with that?" And the minute he said it, I just went, oh, because I remembered I'd left the beer. The bottle over there with the name of the hotel I was staying at. And I just went, you know what, now? Right. Went up to my room, and I'd run a bath, and I'd literally thought, when I'd set out, I thought, this will take me like an hour, and the bath will still be hot. By the time I come back, that bath will be just right. So, of course, bath wasn't just right, it was stone cold, but I needed stone cold because I was covered in cuts and scratches and everything. And lay in the bath, and I basically got out of there and decided to take I had a year completely away from security. The phone rang, and I didn't answer it, changed my number. But just before I kind of retired for that little bit of time, hung up my guns, I got a call from the client, and he said, "Hey, how are you?" And I went, "I'm all right now." Oh my God, just about got out in time. Anyway, yeah, and I went, "Just one thing, and I just need to ask you." And he said, "What?" And I said, you know that job? He said, "Yeah." And I said, "I was on my own, eh?" And he went, "Yeah, of course you were." I said, right, thanks for that. And it did push me out the game. But that's where, I tell you what it is that's where it's your 10,000 hours in some ways. It's like for all that time, all the patterns I follow, all the little rituals, everything, I would never, never, never not do. But it was just, it looked so easy. And I think the true kind of definition of an expert is kind of knowing not just seeing when it went wrong, but knowing that that was where it went wrong. It went wrong because it was spontaneous. When actually, for all the fun and everything, and all the laughs that I'm giving you and talking to you about it, it's a serious profession. It requires serious preparation and expertise. It requires discipline and commitment. And the minute that you let that go, even when you've been doing it since you were 7 years old, running away from lions in Southport Zoo, the minute that you let that go and you get cocky or arrogant, you lose your edge. And that's what I'd lost. And it took me a year before I'd even consider coming back into the game. Now, by the time that year had gone past, the internet had suddenly become everything.
Yeah.
And suddenly I realised that there were people out there, not only that did the job, but they trained in the job. And the people were interested in it, could see the value of it. So.
Well, good. I mean, it's incredible. I mean, the other point there is, as well as everything you said, which I agree with, the important thing is when anything doesn't go wrong in your job or in business or in your life, that you also learn from it. And everything you've just talked about keeping your edge and getting back to basics, that feeds into that. I just wanted to ask you, Jenny, I mean, that brings us kind of up to date, but now you've got your own business, you've got an award-winning podcast, you have
2 actually.
So two award-winning two awards or 2 podcasts.
So Tice Talk won Best Up and Coming, and Human Factor Security Podcast won Best Podcast.
And I would honestly
Overall.
The biggest compliment I would give to both of those shows is that you don't need to be an expert in this technical area to enjoy them, because the way they're ran, the way they're presented is so good.
Oh, thank you.
That I would recommend them to anyone. You're very welcome. But tell me, Jenny, what's next for you in the sort of next few years ahead? What are your goals?
So we've got to get this story needs telling properly. So, I've realised after being asked to do it, like a lot of interviews, and a lot of people were fascinated by it. So there's a book. So it's props to anyone who writes a biography and autobiography, because, oh my God, it's the hardest thing to know what to exclude. But we're putting the book out there, and also I'm going to train people. So as of autumn 2021, there will be a curriculum, so I will teach people how to do the job. Now, to get onto that course is not going to be easy, because I'm going to vet you. I am going to vet you and make sure, because there's a lot of people out there who want to do the job, who aren't going to they wouldn't pass what we call the coffee test, which is this, oh my God, I'm robbing a bank. You can't have that. So if you spill the coffee when you're robbing a bank, then you're not a bank robber, really. But also, obviously, there's morals and ethics that we need to think about. So we're going to teach people, because I'm getting too old for it. I'm not fit now. I can't be running around on rooftops, falling off roofs. I fell off a roof in Transylvania. I remember on the way down thinking, this is the last time I'm going to fall off a roof.
I think when your guest just drops in that they fell off the roof in Transylvania, you know they've got a pretty busy life, and you don't want to be facing any more lions, do you?
So I have actually done more than one zoo. I still specialise in zoos and parks.
You haven't still got your trusty Sesame Street torch, have you?
No, that was definitely left behind. So I hate Sesame Street now. I hate it ever since then. So there's that, and obviously we're growing the business. But I think what the pandemic did was show that we could do an awful lot online. Absolutely. So we can do a lot of training online. We used to do basically reverse escape rooms. So you've got to get out. We set it up so people get in. So we need to do that, and we're gonna, once we all get back out there, we'll be setting up I'll certify people if they can get past things. So there's that side of it. I'm not giving up the ghost yet, but I do less of the infiltration, but I try and do about 4 or 5 a year.
Just to keep your match fit.
Just to keep the hands in and keep your match fit. And I've done some in COVID, which have been hilarious, because I mean, it's just a gift. And that's why, from a security point of view, everybody needs to tell the staff what to expect when you go back to the office, because the hybrid work, nobody knows which way's up. And we've already gone into about 1,000 places just going, COVID inspector, wait there. God.
And you wouldn't knock them back, would you?
And everyone just goes, oh, okay. And you just go, no.
Well, I can see how the new normal is going to raise a whole range of new issues which you can help businesses with. I mean, sadly, we've got to call it a wrap shortly, but on our podcast socials, we're going to have links to Human Factor Security. We have links to the podcast and to Tesla Talk. We're also going to have all
Tice
of you.
Talk,
sorry,
Tesla.
Tice Talk, Tesla.
Don't say Tesla, my husband will have a fit.
Yeah, so that's the car. That's the Elon Musk car, isn't it?
It really
sorry.
is. No.
Can you break into one of them? I bet you can't hotwire them, can you? But I just wanted to ask you a final question. This is what I ask all of my guests, Jenny. What does success mean to you?
I think success is the culmination of hard work. It's, you know, I like, one thing that always kind of gets me really choked, which is the most stupid thing in the world, is when I watch ice skaters win medals. And everyone laughs at me, all my mates laugh and all my family laugh at me. But the reason is because I know what level of discipline and sacrifice that it takes to achieve something at that level of expertise. So success for me is the culmination of those, you know, of missed drinks on Saturday afternoons, of early mornings when you'd rather be in bed, of reading a book that you find boring but it's necessary, of sort of dismissing distraction when you'd rather be doing something else. Success is the culmination of the sacrifice of not doing the things you'd rather do in the short term. So in the long term, so it's like Muhammad Ali. So in the long term, you dance under the lights in the ring. That's what success really is.
Well, I can't improve on that at all. That's a wonderful description of success. And that's what we talk about on this podcast. It's about achieving, but achieving with challenges along the way and riding those out and enjoying it as well. And I tell you what, Jenny, I've really enjoyed having you as a guest.
It's been my pleasure, absolutely.
And it's been lovely having a drink with you. I wish you all the very, very best for all these fantastic projects you've got. Please come back and see us. But in the meantime, it's Jenny Radcliffe, aka The People Hacker.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, wow is all I can say. I am absolutely gobsmacked by that. That was just such an amazing interview there. For someone who grew up at 7 to 8 years of age, hanging around with the dodgy cousins to create a whole business. Oh, I'm just, honestly...
Well, if you could, I mean, first of all, I'm exhausted after that, but in a good way. But if you could clone a perfect guest for our podcast, it'd be Jenny Radcliffe, wouldn't it? Because,
100%.
I mean, the expertise she's developed, the fact that she's shown such determination, but also, I mean, to be a genuine global voice in such a niche area is amazing. And I mean, what a CV and what a selection of stories. I could have got on all right.
No, I've just got visions of it doing like army rolls under shutters and stuff, like 007, honest to God. No, she was brilliant, but you know what? It really does make you think and stop and think, how secure is my house? How secure is the place that I work? Because I think I'd be guilty of just going, oh, do you know what? You can't get in the building. I'll let you in if they said they was to go to the office next door or something, which is...
Well, that's the point, isn't it? That it makes sense what she does. So I think if there are businesses, I mean, obviously we're in business, and I was thinking to myself, I would just leave my door unlocked and think, I'm taking my laptop home with me, so it doesn't matter. But no, I can see how she's been as successful as she has, Jenny, because businesses do tend to focus these days upon things like cybersecurity, you know, and rightly so.
Yeah.
About things like dodgy text messages and hacks into email accounts. But then I think if someone was lifting ceiling panels up in a high-vis vest, I probably wouldn't just pay any regard to them.
Oh, exactly.
And it's not hard to see why Jenny's both been as successful as she has in business and also why she's viewed as such an expert. But I do want to point out to everyone, I don't endorse drinking at 14 or 15. I don't endorse breaking into zoos. I don't endorse breaking into buildings. But hey, Jenny's living an interesting life.
Oh, I mean, I can't say nothing. I was drinking at 14. I don't endorse it either, but it happens.
It totally does.
No, honestly, that was one of my favourite interviews. That she was just such a dream to have on the podcast, and she's got a book coming out, hasn't she? So when that gets released, I think we should ask her
back on and keep an eye out for it, guys. But I guess after that brilliant episode, that's all we've got time for on Success Won't Come Calling. That's it from me and Stacey. See you next time. This is the podcast for people who want to be better tomorrow than they were today.